Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Rochelle from Rochelle.Handmade.Designs, and in this video, we are doing a sew along to Butterick 6562. Yeah, so listen, I know it's been a while since I did a sew along, so I figured it was time for me to go ahead and do a sew along. So the sew along we are doing is part of the top series, part 3, Summers Out, Arms Out edition. We are doing that second top as part of the top series. The top we are doing is a coat shoulder top utilizing Butterick 6562. I'll be sewing along to view D on that pattern as well. Now before we get started, go ahead and hit the like button and the subscribe button, and also turn on the notification bell so you are notified every time I upload a new video. So without further ado, let me give you some background before we start the tutorial. So towards the end, when it gets to the ruffle section, now in the video, you will see that I said I was going to do my own tweet, which I did, but I went back to the pattern and decided that I was going to do the pattern, what the pattern needed me to do. So what I did was I went ahead and unstitched it, sew the ruffle on, top stitch it, and then add my buttons. So it's not in the videos, but I did want you to know that go back to the instructions if you need to. If you are not following along to the tutorial, go back to the instructions and it'll tell you that you need to top stitch it down before you add your buttons as well. So I did want to make that note here before we get right on into the tutorial. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get right on into the new video. Hey everyone. So basically we're going to go ahead and get into the supplies that you will need in order to construct your coat shoulder top. So the pattern that we are using is Butterick 6562. Now I have the tray right here to keep everything together, and I like to utilize the tray, which I will be talking about this in a different video. It keeps all my projects together, and I'm able to cut about 5 projects out and put it on the tray to store. Now this will be in a different video about the tray system that I use, but what you will need in order to construct this coat shoulder top would be the pattern, which is Butterick 6562. You'll also need the pattern instructions. You will need 2 rotary cutters, one for paper, one for fabric. Never mix the 2 there. And you'll also need some scissors. If you decide that you want to cut out your pattern with scissors, you'll need scissors for that. Now I do have my marking tools, which is a white chalk because I am using dark fabric, and I also have a disappearing ink. Now my fabric is dark to the point where you do not see the disappearing ink, but I am able to see it on my interfacing, so I have that as well. You will need some pins in order to keep your fabric together, and you'll need your seam ripper, which I do not have over here, but I will put it close by just in case I make a mistake and need to rip my seams out. Now, the only other thing that you will need that is not here in the tray is 6 5/8" buttons. Now, I do not have buttons right now simply because I need to go to Joann's and pick some up because the buttons that I have will not match what fabric I'm using. But that's all the supplies that you will need in order to construct your coat shoulder top. So let's go ahead and get right on into the tutorial. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the pieces you will need in order to construct your coat shoulder top. So the first pattern piece you will need is pattern piece 11, which is your shoulder strap for all views. You'll need to cut 2 of fabric. You'll need pattern piece number 6, which is the back band for all views. You need to cut 2 on the fold of fabric and also interface 1 on the fold of fabric. Next pattern piece is pattern piece number 5, which is your front band for all views. You need to cut 4 of these and interface 2. You'll need pattern piece number 12. You will not cut this out of any fabric. This is just your buttonhole guide for once you complete the garment. This is pattern piece number 12. Next one is pattern piece number 9. It's your front ruffles for view D. That's the view that I am doing, and you need to cut 2. Next pattern piece is pattern piece number 3, which is the back of your top. You need to cut 1 unfold of fabric, and that's pattern piece number 3. Next one is pattern piece number 2, which is the front of your top, and you need to cut 2. And the last pattern piece would be pattern piece number 10, which is the back ruffles. You need to cut 1 unfolded fabric. The only thing that you will need is I have made my own bias tape, but you need 1 yard of a 1/2 inch bias tape. Now, if you are making your own bias tape, all you're going to do is cut your strips 1 inch. So basically, when you fold your fabric in half, iron it, you're going to cut 1 inch strips, and then just fold it 1 time over after you complete your strips. Sew them together and then fold them over to create single fold. Single fold is just folding over 1 time. Double fold is when you meet them together and then fold again. So make sure that you just have 1 yard of bias tape, and 1 yard is 36 inches if you are making your own bias tape. Now that's all the pattern pieces you will need in order to construct this top. So let's go ahead and get right on into the tutorial. All right, so the first thing you want to do is grab pattern piece number 2, which is your front. And what you're going to do is go ahead and make your darts. Now, all I'm going to do is go ahead and pin it because I don't want to make too many runs over to the sewing machine. So I went ahead and pinned my darts right here. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I made clips at the bottom of my top. So all I'm going to do is fold to that clip, baste across the top, and then fold. I'm going to press it, of course, and then fold again. And then I'm going to sew all the way down close to that edge. So once again, I'm going to tell you what to do. You're going to fold in the first time, make sure you press and baste across the top. And then you're going to fold and press the second time. I have clips where I marked where I need to fold at. You're going to press it all the way down. And then you're going to baste close to that edge. So go ahead to the sewing machine and do that. All right, so now that you have pattern piece number 2, you have your darts done in the back. And you went ahead and basted the front edge where the button's going to be. So what you want to do is go ahead and grab pattern piece number 3. So it should be folded onto itself like this. You're going to open it out with right sides up. You're going to pin pattern piece number 2 to pattern piece number 3, like so. So just make sure that you are pinning at your notches. I'm going to finish pinning this one because I did it, and then I'll show you the other side. All right, so I'm pinning that side. I'm going to go ahead and pin this side for you. So what you want to do is with right sides together, you want to pin at the side seams, matching up your notches. So make sure you match up your notches right here at the top and at the bottom, and then pin the length of your top. Now that I have it pinned, using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, backstitch at the beginning and at the end, and then finish off your seams. Okay, so now that you have sewn the front part onto the back part, what you're going to do is go ahead and move your top out of the way. Actually, you could keep your top. You're going to grab your bias tape. So open it out with right sides up. So right side up. You're going to open it out. And what you're going to do is grab your bias tape and you're going to pin like so along the arm section of both arm curves of your top. So what you're going to do, let me grab my pins, and I'm just going to pin the bias tape onto the armhole like so. Now for me, I'm going to use 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm going to go to the sewing machine and use 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, backstitch at the beginning and at the end, and basically sew on my bias binding. So go to the sewing machine and do that. Okay, so now that we have went ahead and finished off the armhole by using bias tape. So basically what I did was I attached the bias tape, I pinned it together, sewn 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, press the bias tape in, and then finished off by top stitching on the top using 3/8 of an inch to enclose that bias tape to give it a clean finish on the inside as well as the outside. Now go ahead and put your front and back pieces together of your top. Put that aside quickly and grab pattern piece number 5 and 6, which is your front band and your back band. Now what you're going to do is go ahead and open out pattern piece number 6, and then you're going to attach pattern piece number 5 to each end of pattern piece number 6 with right sides together. So you're going to attach this one to that side, and then this is the right side. So you're going to attach to this side. So it's going to look like that. So what you're going to do is pin on both sides, matching up those notches, of course. So pin that side as well as the other side, matching up the notches. And using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, you're going to back stitch at the beginning and the end and make sure that you sew both side seams. So underarm, it's the underarm seams for your front band and back band. So go ahead and do that now. Okay, so now that you have went ahead and attached your front band to your back band, that's pattern piece 5 and 6, and then press your seams open. Now the one that's not interfaced is used as your main piece, and the one that is interfaced is used as your facing piece. Now what I did to the ones that's interfaced, which is this one right here, I went ahead and sewn my 5 to my 6 like I did previously. And then I pressed up at the very bottom, I pressed up 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then what I'm going to do is go ahead and trim it down to about 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So I'm going to get rid of about a fourth of an inch seam allowance right here. All right, so now that you have it trimmed down to 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, go ahead and put your front band out of the way and grab pattern piece number 9 and 10, which is your front and back ruffles. And what you're going to do is with right sides together, you're going to attach pattern piece number 10 to pattern piece number 9. So grab pattern piece number 10, open it out, and then you're going to attach pattern piece number 9. Make sure you open that one out as well. And you're going to attach at the side seams. So I'm going to do this side seam first, and I'm going to attach this one there, making sure right sides are together. And then I'm going to attach this one to this side. All right. And then I'm going to pin. So let me grab my pins, and then I'm going to pin, making sure I'm matching up my side seams, of course. So make sure you match up your notches, your seams, and make sure that the raw edges are even when you are pinning. Now that I have it pinned using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, back stitch at the beginning and at the end, and then go ahead and finish off your seam allowance. Okay, so now that you have went ahead and attached your front ruffle, which is pattern piece number 9, to your back ruffle, what you needed to do, which I have already done this, I'm just going to tell you exactly what I did, is I made a narrow hem at the front of pattern piece number 9, and then the bottom of pattern piece number 9 and 10. So basically, how you do a narrow hem is you base, like right here on both pattern piece number 9, which is the front ruffle. You are to create a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, press to that line, and then press up that 5/8 of an inch seam allowance to create a narrow hem. You do that on both sides of the front. So there's one there, and then I did the narrow hem on the other side as well. So there's narrow hems at the front part of your ruffles, and then you are to do the same thing at the very bottom of your ruffle. Now I do want to make a note of what side is the bottom. You have dots. I hope you can see this on camera, but you have dots at the on the front part of your ruffles. those dots are the top portion of your ruffles. So make sure you are actually doing the narrow hem on the bottom portion instead of the top portion of your ruffles. Now that I explained that, go ahead and make your gathering stitches at the top of your ruffles. Now I have already made my gathering stitches. I made the first one at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance and then the second one at 1/4 of an inch. The reason why I don't do 5/8 of an inch and then 1/2 inch is simply because I don't want to be pulling out gathers after I sew it together. So I just basically do either 1/2 inch and 3/8 or 3/8 and 1/4. So that is just a personal preference. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and gather. You want to gather your front, back, and the other portion of your front ruffle. So go ahead and gather the top portion of your ruffles now. Okay, so now that you have gathered your ruffle, your tower of ruffle, because it was a lot of gathering, once you have done that, go ahead and pin it onto your band, your front band. I forgot what it was, the front band. So what you're going to do is go ahead and base. Now, one thing I want to mention about the ruffle is you have a dot. So you want to make sure that the front edge of your ruffle is meeting up with that dot on both sides, right? You don't want it to extend all the way out to the end. So make sure you are pinning where that dot is. So using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, you're going to base your ruffle onto your band. So, and make sure you are using the band that is not interfaced. So go ahead and go to your sewing machine and base your ruffle onto your band now. All right, so now that I have my ruffles attached to my band, I'm going to show you that. I have the ruffle attached to the band. This is the uninterfaced band, by the way. So go ahead and grab your top. And what you want to do is you're going to attach the lower portion of your band to your top, like so. So basically, the ruffle part is going to be down. The right side of your band is going to be up. So basically what you want to do is you want to pin like so. So now you have a dot right here. You're going to make sure that that dot matches up with the line right here where your dot is. There is a line, so you make sure that it matches up right there. And make sure that your notches is matching up as well. So pin at that notch and pin at that dot. So there is your notch and then your dot. And then you're going to pin all the way across, making sure you are pinning at your dots and your notches as well. And then make sure you are pinning the underarm seams as well. So go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have my band and ruffle attached to my upper portion of my top, using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, I'm going to stitch. However, what I'm going to do is stitch from the end to this dot right here, back stitch at the beginning, and then back stitch at the dot. Break my thread and go to the next dot, starting here, back stitch at that dot, and come all the way across to this dot, back stitch at that dot, and then coming to the other section, and then starting at this dot, and then close it out to the end. Now, I'm going to show you in the instructions. Let me pull the instructions to show you what I'm talking about. This is number 26. So where it says pin lower edge of band to upper edge of top, matching symbols in center, stitch, trim, and then press your seam towards the band. So basically, if you look right here on the photo, it shows you that you're going to start at the beginning, stop at that dot, come over to the other dot, stitch across to the next dot, and then you're going to do that to the other portion. So that is what you need to be doing in step number 26. So go ahead to the sewing machine and attach your band onto your ruffle as I just explained. So go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have sewn in between the dots as mentioned, you can go ahead and move your top to the side. You can go ahead and trim it. I will not be trimming mine down at this moment because there is a interface one that I will need to do. But if you want, you can go ahead and trim yours down now if you decide that you want to do that now. I'll just take the step and do it in the next step. All right, so just go ahead and move your top off to the side and grab your shoulder straps. So there's your shoulder straps. And what you're going to do is with right sides together, you're going to fold in half, and using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, you're going to baste across the top. Now, I will not be using a basting stitch. I will be using a regular length stitch. I believe in the instructions. I do not have the instructions right in front of me, but I believe that the instruction wants you to baste. If not, let me grab the instructions to be sure. I have done shoulder straps so many times, but each instructions are different. So number 27 says fold shoulder straps on fold line, right sides together, stitch long edges, and then you're going to trim your seam allowance. So basically, you're going to use a regular length stitch, and with right sides together, let's make sure that that's the right side. It is. You're going to fold in half and pin all the way across. And then using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance and a regular length stitch, you're going to back stitch at the beginning and at the end, and then just trim your seams down and turn it right side out. So go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that we have the straps done, what you need to do is go ahead and grab your top. And what you're going to do now is you're going to put your straps onto the back portion of your top. Now, you'll have dots in the back. Now, this is the back. So what you want to do is that portion that has like an angle, right? You want to make sure that you have your straps going in that direction. So for instance, there's 2 dots right here, and there's 2 dots right here. So what you want to do is place your straps in between those 2 dots and pin. So I'm going to pin here. And then I'm going to pin my other straps. Make sure the angle portion is at the top. And then I'm going to pin my other angle portion to these 2 dots right here at the end. So I'm just going to place it in between there. And pin. Now, another thing I want to mention while I'm pinning the straps is make sure that when you press your seam allowance, that the wrong side where the line is, when you turn over, you don't have that line like I have right here. So when I turn it over for the right side, I want the line to face the back. So what I'm gonna do is swap it and turn it over to where I don't have that issue. So I'm just gonna turn it over and then repin, because I want my right side to look good just as well as the wrong side. So when I flip it up for my strap, you don't have that line. The line I'm talking about is this line right here where you pressed it. So when I have attached the strap to the back portion of, to the front portion of it, that my top, then I do not have that line in my way. And I'm gonna do the same thing. Now this one is fine. This strap right here is fine. So when I turn it, I do not have that problem. Now that I have both of the straps on, go ahead and baste across the top of your straps now. Okay, so now that you have your straps sewn on, both straps are now basted on, go ahead and put your top off to the side quickly and grab the facing pieces for your front and back band. Now, one thing that I want to mention is I did this when I did the uninterfaced front band. So I went ahead and attach the facing pieces together. So basically, if you did not do that then, what you wanted to do is attach your pattern piece number 5 to your pattern piece number 6 at the underarm seams. Press it open, and then you're going to press up 5/8 of an inch seam allowance on the bottom portion of your band. So that's where we're at right now. So what I'm gonna do is trim down the 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm at the very bottom of my band. I'm just gonna trim it down to 3/8 of an inch. So go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I trimmed my seam allowance to 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, go ahead and grab your top. And what you're going to do is pin your facing piece to the top, across the top. So go ahead and do that now. So you're going to pin at the end. Make sure you match up your notches as well. And then you're going to pin all the way across. So go ahead and do that now. Okay, so now that I went ahead and pinned my facing and band onto my top, what I'm going to do is, using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, I'm going to back stitch at the beginning, come to the first dot, back stitch there, start at the second dot, come to this dot, back stitch, and then scoot over to this dot, which you could barely see, start there, and then stop at this dot and go all the way across, making sure you're back stitching at the beginning, stopping at each dot, break your thread, and then start at the second dot. So go ahead and stitch all the way across the top portion of your top now. Okay, so now that I have sewn the band facing onto the top, the next thing I'm gonna do is go ahead and trim it down. So I'm gonna trim it to about 1/4 of an inch. Take off 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. So I'm just going to trim that down. So you go ahead and trim it down as well. All right, so now that you have trimmed your seam allowance down, you're going to turn it over and understitch. Understitch is done at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. So you're going to understitch you can understitch on the facing. So you're going to press this up, and you're going to be sewing on the facing. That's the interface portion. So you want to make sure that you are basically having this portion down and you are understitching on this portion, right? And you want to do as close to the edge as possible, about 1/4 of an inch away, making sure that the seam allowance is pressed up towards the facing. So go ahead and do that now and understitch all the way across. Okay, so now that I went ahead and understitched on the facing, and then what I did was I pressed the facing to the inside of the top, okay? So that's what you are seeing right here. Right here. It's the facing pressed in. Now I'm going to slip stitch because I don't want stitching on the right side of my top, not for this one at least. So I'm going to slip stitch this close. Now, one thing that I do want to mention, I'm going to grab the instructions quickly, and I just glanced at the instructions because it doesn't tell what to do with this piece. So I'm going to turn it to the right side so you can see what I'm talking about, okay? So this is the front. This is the front. I'm going to attach my straps here shortly. But there is a piece right here, which was the front band. Now, it does not tell you in the instructions exactly what to do with this front band, okay? So I'm going to go back to, I'm going to move my top out the way shortly, and then go to the instructions. Now, if you go to number 29 after you attach, you based on the shoulder straps, you do your facing on 30, and then come down to 31, you attach the facing on the band, and then you understitch. Well, when you get to 33, right, it tells you to turn your facing to the inside, and then you're going to press, then you're going to insert your shoulder straps, and then you're going to slip stitch, the facing, right, over the seams. Okay, what do you do with the top portion of the band? Okay, which is just flapping around right here. Now I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. You could do whatever you decide that you want to do, but what I'm going to do is fold in 3/8 of an inch seam allowance and then fold to the top portion of the facing. So I'm going to give it just a little bit. So I'm going to show you what I'm going to do because it doesn't tell. I'm going to fold in about 1/4 of an inch and then take that 1/4 of an inch and press down. Just like that, to where you have a stand-up band and it's completely seam. And then I'm going to stitch as close to the edge as possible just to secure it in place. That's what I'm going to do to mine. It doesn't say in the instructions. If anyone knows exactly what to do with that portion, please comment and let me know. Other than that front band, not very clear on what to do from the instructions. I'm just telling you what I'm going to do with mine. The only thing left for you to do is turn up 5/8 of an inch seam allowance on the hem and sew your hem in place using a narrow hem. After you do that, all you have to do is sew on your button. So I'm going to show you the button. So this is the front portion of it. Let me turn it to the right side. All right, so this is what your top should look like right about now, minus the front band. I'll figure that out and share it once I figure out how to do it, but I'm telling you what I'm gonna do with mine. All right, so this is the front band. So what you're gonna do is sew on your buttons. So you're gonna sew on your buttonholes on the right side when wearing it and sew on your buttons on the left side when wearing it. So when you look at it completely like this, you'll sew your buttonholes on the left side. So your buttons on the right side. So don't switch them because then you'll be having us button it up like this. So once again, when you're looking at the fabric and the fabric is up facing you, make sure you sew your buttonholes on this side where my hand is. So your buttonholes on this side. So your buttons on this side because you want the right side when wearing it, which is this side, to cross over and button on the left side when wearing it, which is my right side right here. After you make your buttonholes and sew on your button, you are all done with your top. And once again, this top is Butterick 6562, the cold shoulder top, which is top number 2 in the Summer Top Series Part 3, Summers Out, Arms Out. Well, there you have it. You just finished sewing your second top as part of the Top Series Part 3 Summers Out, Arms Out edition. This is the second top, which is the cold shoulder top, utilizing Butterick 6562. So like, comment, and subscribe. Also, turn on the notification bell so you are notified every time I upload an amazing video. So until next time, peace out.